Arcane Mage. Arcane Mage going into TBC Anniversary is going to be disgusting. Unlike in classic TBC, post-nerf content means shorter fights, less mana management, and way more time just absolutely blah. Arcane will be strong right out of the gate, but you're going to see huge power spikes around tier 5 with your 2 set, I believe it is. And I do remember watching mages at that point in classic TBC just turn into absolute DPS gods. So much so that I remember it's a lot of people asking me could they reroll Mage around that time. People love to say that Arcane is a one-button mash fest, and yeah, that's kind of true, but there definitely is a massive difference between a good and a bad Mage. There's definitely some sort of skill expression there around mana usage or cooldown timing, whatever it may be. On a raid level though, Arcane Mages do need a lot of support to truly pump. Shamans with their Mana Tide and Mana Spring are pretty huge. Innervates from Druids, and of course obviously your Shadow Priest and being your mana battery. If your Arcane Mage gets none of that, they're not really going to be with you. Utility wise though, they do bring intellect, woo! But mages also have some unique raid mechanics, most notably mage tanking. There are fights where mages are required to tank, and I've absolutely seen mages fail at it. Early on, fights like the Fire Mob and Mulgar and Grol's Lair, you might want to consider putting on an extra piece of PvP gear just for a bit of more stamina. I've seen a lot of mages get one shot there. And then there's Ilden Council in Black Temple. I still remember a run where we had a mage who just couldn't do it. I can't tell you what the issue was, skill, gear, whatever, I don't know what it was. He just couldn't do it. We did have one guy, absolute Chad, comes home after day drinking the whole day, logs in, and we one-shot the mechanic and boss falls over. So, there's definitely a skill expression there, as I just said. Yes, and one last thing. Good mages use spell steal. There are places like in Karazhan where you can steal buffs that can stack up pretty silly. And you can do silly stuff with that as well. I think is that Netherspite I'm thinking of? There's mobs just outside Netherspite where you can stack your buffs up to 10 and then zug it. Yeah, keep your eyes open for stealable buffs. Because again, that's how you separate yourself as a good mage from an average one. Balanced Druid. Boomkins are in a weird place in DBC. They're insanely valuable, but their personal DPS is below average. And in stronger groups, you'll often see rest of Druids flex into Dream State instead. That being said, let's talk about what they actually bring, because personally, I still plan to have a balanced Druid in my comp. First up, improved Fairy Fire. This increases melee and ranged hit by 3%. And we're talking about raid optimization. This is probably the most enormous DPS you're going to get spread out of a 25-man group from one buff. On its own, the buff is just insanely valuable. I usually put my Boomkin in the Warlock group. That's where this 5% spell crit will probably be the most beneficial. And I'd love to see a damage meter that actually shows how much a balanced Druid gives to a raid outside of their own actual number. Because I can guarantee you a lot. They also give the standard Druid utility, Battle Res, Innervate, and But one thing that people do often forget is Insect Swarm. Post-nerf, most defensive buffs won't matter as much, but reducing a boss's hit chance by 2% is still pretty valuable. If I were maining a balanced Druid going into TBC, I would absolutely make sure that I have an off-spec that is Dream State, that allows sort of that flexibility, and would also solidify your raid spot. Don't get yourself replaced by some scrub tree pressing Fairy Fire. Warlocks. They just press Shadow Bolt. Bullshit. Warlocks press Shadow Bolt and stare intensely at the threat meter. There is a difference, okay? Warlocks are one of the most stable DPSs in TBC. You can play fire, but raids mostly lean into Shadow, so it usually comes out ahead. Improved Shadow Bolt stacks across multiple Warlocks. You've got Shadow Priest buff. You have Vampire Touch and Shadow Weaving from Shadow Priest. And throughout TBC, you're always going to be sitting around top of the DPS. Whether that be an AoE or single target, it's very, very strong. Another important button saying that is Speed of Corruption. Yes, a second button. Crazy. This spell is basically the reason you'll want a Prop Paladin in every raid. And if not for bosses, then absolutely for trash. Warlocks completely dominate AoE and TBC. And again, you're usually spamming one button. Yeah. Any good Warlock will also have a seed set, usually stacking crit. Exact stats depend on how fast things die, but seed damage is also important in TBC this time round, and realistically a seed set, a seed focused setup, if not a full spec around it, is going to be important. There's even an Affliction Warlock talent that buffs seed, which you can pick up while still playing Destro. Personally, I'm probably going to, I'm going to have a seed set and spec, and then my normal single target Zug set and spec. Seed of Corruption carries a lot of fights in TBC. You know, we're talking Muru, all of Mount Hygel, Morgum Tidewalker with the Murlocs. But yeah, on that note, have you ever done Mount Hygel with a Warlock? Yeah, me neither. I wouldn't be in that raid. I wouldn't be there. It's not happening. Warlocks do bring other things such as curses, elements, recklessness, weakness. You'll usually just assign one Warlock per curse, and if you get to be the 4th Warlock, congrats, you might be able to press Doom. Woohoo! Doom is actually interesting. Knowing when it's going to pop for threat reasons or damage amp windows is genuinely impactful gameplay. You know, I remember on Leotheris, when you're tanking Leotheris, if you time Doom correctly, when he threat resets, you just get a big massive chunk of threat because of Doom, which a lot of players seem to not be able to do for some reason, I don't know. Speaking of elements, you'll want one Affliction Warlock in the raid as well. Improved Curse of Elements is pretty big DPS. People shit on Affliction as it does slightly less damage than Destro, but it always has some sort of efficiency and sort of like, it does have that seed talent. It has way more buttons to press. It's a lot more engaging during raid nights. And also we have Warlock tanks, like I just mentioned. Leotheris the Blind, you've got Mulgar, you've got Kel'Thas, you've got Illidan technically. Although we usually kill Illidan so fast, I've never actually seen the phase. Well, I've seen it once actually, that's a lie. I was in a truly crushed pug once. It's still fun to tank though. Honestly, like for Illidan specifically, it's really a shame that we outgear that boss design. But yeah, it's a rant for another day. Shadow Priest, truly the GOAT of TBC. Okay, you know, that title might belong to Resto Shaman, but you guys can argue about that. But Shadow Priest is definitely up there. Shadow Priests don't really pump the meters. Their personal damage doesn't scale hard over the expansion, but every single TBC raid needs at least one. There can't really be an exception there. They bring Misery and Shadow Weaving, which is a massive buff to themselves and their Warlocks in the group. Vampiric Touch turns them into the ultimate mana battery, keeping your Arcane Mages blasting and your Prot Paladins functioning. And on top of that, you've got Fortitude, Shadow Resist, and honestly, yeah, they've just got so much passive value just for being in the raid, it's crazy. Missing a Shadow Priest is something that an entire raid feels. Classes that are used to having one in their group instantly start to feel like they're playing worse, or there's something gone, there's something missing. Gameplay wise, Shadow Priest rotation is pretty much the same as it's been throughout all of Classic, and honestly that kind of just proves how solid that rotation is. Managing Mind Flay ticks, clipping correctly, min-maxing your uptime still matters, even if you're not, you know, even if you're like that quote-unquote buff class. Doing more damage is still important, and there really is a skill expression here, and it's genuinely rewarding to play. Oh, and never mind that, I also forgot about Vampiric Embrace. You just deal damage and your party gets healed, and it's very, very strong and way more impactful than people give it credit for. Another reason why groups instantly notice when their Shadow Priest is missing is they might die more often. One last thing, if your healers really are struggling and you do need to move your Shadow Priest into their group, you know, for extra sustain, it is something to be aware of, that you can do that. But personally, it's kind of like the last thing I want to be doing. I want my Shadow Priest improving DPS, and I want my healers to just not go and not be bad. So you gotta do what you gotta do at the end of the day. If they need the mana, get the priest in there and keep the raid alive. Elemental Shaman. The Ele Shaman sits in a similar space to Shadow Priest and Balanced Druid. Their kit brings so much value to the raid, and their group more specifically. Your personal damage honestly doesn't matter that much. You'll start off fairly strong, but around the end of tier 5 and onwards, your DPS kind of falls off. But, you know, there is this one big totem that you bring called Totem of Wrath. For your group, it gives 3% crit and hit, which is huge. Especially early on, Warlocks in particular struggle to get hit rating at the start of TBC, and getting good early game results out of your Warlocks can be quite hard if you don't have an Ellie Shaman to support them. Later in the expansion, there is a real conversation around dropping an Elemental Shaman entirely. As gear improves, it becomes less valuable, and sometimes another pure pumper DPS just benefits the group more from a performance standpoint. That being said, if you want to maximise your value to the raid, you should absolutely invest in your off-spec. Being able to flex when needed is massive. And just to be clear, post-nerf content does change everything. Even if you play Elemental through the whole expansion, you'll still clear everything just fine. I'm not saying don't play Ellie, I'm talking about what typically happens in groups when you start to push performance and optimization. But yeah, again, Shamans do have some mechanical fights that are very good. One that comes to mind specifically is Lady Vash. You always genuinely want to have, unless you're Horde and you're Terran Warrior, you genuinely want to have an Ellie Shaman hiding the Strider mob in the circle around Lady Vash's room. You know, the fact that Ellie Shaman does good aggro and can interrupt and can do Frost Shock is pretty big. So yeah, again, interrupt as well as an Ellie Shaman is crazy. But I do find that in TBC, interrupts do seem to be something up for contention, as warriors don't want to do it. Mages are never fucking pressing counterspell over their dead body, you know. So having that really good interrupt class, that does do good DPS. It's okay DPS, it's not the best. That does bring a very big, powerful totem to the raid group. Can be quite good. Okay guys, that's all of the classes and roles in TBC. And in my next video on this topic, I'll be putting together a roster, not just a meta comp. I want to talk about all the different situations and discuss certain choices that need to be made when thinking about your roster. And sometimes that means making the right choice screws over somebody else's DPS and the conversations that happen around that. So make sure to tune in next time for that. And on another note, I am level 59 on my TBC main over on the hardcore servers. We're over on Kick, where I stream most nights, usually from about 8 PM GMT. I am going to do an event where taking shots and having a few drinks whilst I fight uphill to get my priest to level 60 without dying, obviously. We will have viewer points in play as well, where the watcher yourselves can do some stuff to impede me from hitting level 60, and hopefully overall it'll just be a bit of banter. That'll be on Saturday the 11th, is it? Saturday the 11th? I believe that's the date. Next Saturday anyway. Not this weekend, next weekend. I probably should have looked up the date before making my video. But yeah, other than that guys, please make sure to follow me on Kick and sub to the YouTube channel, and I'll see you next time. Peace.